Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. The first item of business is the election of chair for 25-26. Is there a nomination, please? Caroline?
I'd like to nominate Beth Rowland, please.
Is that seconded, please? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Congratulations, Beth, I think. You're in the chair.
Thank you.
Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Melanie de Jong and Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. They've both had a better offer, clearly. All right. Item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting on page 5 and 6. It seems like a long time ago now. It was March. Anything on page 1, Andrew?
Sorry, it's not page 1, it's...
Oh, sorry, page 5.
Nothing on page 5, but I've got something for page 6.
Yeah.
Page 6 then, so under the Standards Committee annual report, you asked for benchmarking data to bring back to a future meeting, so all the Berkshire authorities will have produced their annual report now for 24-25. So for your next meeting, I'll collate data around the numbers of complaints that other Berkshire authorities receive, so you can compare that to Wokingham. And the other thing just to mention, Chair, is that under the resolution, the second resolution, the committee to give further consideration to training and support for councillors. Just to note that Thames Valley Police have organised various sessions during the spring that members have been invited to, and I know some members have attended those sessions and found them useful. And more broadly, on your agenda this evening, you've got the results of the annual Debate Not Hate survey that's undertaken by the LGA.
Just before that...
Sorry, do you want to introduce the...
No, I want to tell you there are no public questions, no parish or town council questions, and no councillor questions.
Item 10, Andrew, are you happy to take that?
This is the training item, Chair. Yeah.
Yes, did you want to give any more information?
Yes, I was just going to do a very short presentation this evening, just to remind members at the start of the new municipal year around the terms of reference for the committee. Just before I start, I might need a bit of technical help from Neil, so I seem to get a lot of feedback on here. So let me just join the meeting and share my screen. Let's see. It is. That's it. we've got there in the end. Okay, so yeah, apologies for that. So just very briefly, I know some members who are, well, the members tonight, I think, were on the committee last year, so hopefully this will be quite familiar to you. But if I just take you through, there we go. Right, so just to take you through the terms of reference for the committee and to hopefully just help you in terms of sort of thinking ahead to future meetings and items that you might want further information to be brought back. So I'm just going to go through some key parts of the Constitution and the Standards Committee's terms of reference. So just in terms of the law, this is what the law says about standards regimes in local authorities. So we've got to have our own standards code. And as you'll be aware, we've got one which is almost predominantly based on the LGA's model code of conduct. It includes mandatory interest provisions. It describes the process for dealing with any complaints should they arise. And it requires us to appoint at least one independent person. So that's what the law says. In terms of the committee itself, so it's comprised of members from the Borough Council, and it's comprised of 3 co-opted non-voting town or parish councillors. In terms of the independent persons, and just to say, I think we're very fortunate now in Wokingham that we've had 2 new independent persons join us in recent months. So that's Jan Cameron and Terry Ellison, who are both with the committee this evening at the back of the room. And we've also got Paddy Haycox, who's been an independent person for some time now. I'll say a little bit about the role in a minute. Parish and town council members, really important as well in terms of representing the views of the parishes or the town councils, particularly if there's any code of conduct complaints relating to those parishes or towns. I won't read all that out, but that's what it says in your terms of reference for the key things that you're required to look at over the course of the year. And I guess the first one is very general, isn't it? But sort of that expectation of promoting and maintaining high standards of conduct by councillors, co-opted members, church, parent, governor, representatives. I'm very keen to sort of hear from the committee if there's anything more that you think we can do as officers in terms of supporting that particular function that you've got. Other administrative points just set out in the Constitution. Again, I won't go through those. They're pretty sort of standard for all committees. But we do meet at least 4 times a year, and there is a provision for extra meetings if they're needed. And I'm pleased to say that there's at least 3 councillors here tonight, so we are quorate, so that's always good. Just to move on then in terms of complaints, and just to talk very briefly about the process should a complaint come in. And again, these are straight lifts from the Constitution, but as I said earlier, we are required to adopt clear arrangements for dealing with complaints. What I would say as monitoring officer is my role is to administer the complaint. I do that not off my own cuff. It's very much about using the procedures and the process that you as councillors and full council have agreed that you want me to administer on behalf of the council. So what's the first thing that happens? So if a complaint comes in, and probably these metrics are quite important as well in terms of just being aware when you get information on how complaints are dealt with, the sort of expectations that you should have in terms of holding me to account in terms of whether or not we comply. So in terms of receipt, very quick acknowledgement. I'm very conscious that both for the complainant and also for the subject member, it's really important that all complaints get dealt with as expeditiously as we possibly can do. Sometimes that is difficult, but that's the clear expectation. So I will, certainly within 3 days, also inform the subject member and ask for a response from them. And if it's a complaint relating to a parish or town councillor, I would talk to the clerk as well. So as I said, it's really important on complaints that we hear the voice of the subject member, the person who's been subject to the complaint, and they have up to 15 working days to respond to a complaint once I've sent it to them. And I would say probably, certainly 9 times out of 10, more than that, all councillors, as you might expect, are very keen to give their response to the complaint and set their mitigations or their side of the complaint to me, and that's really important. Once that 15 days have elapsed and I've got the subject member's response, I would do what I call is an initial assessment, and that's based, and this is at the very early stage, is basically just based on what the complainant has said and what the subject member has said in response. And if it's a town or parish council complaint, getting a response from the clerk as well. Although, as it says there, the clerk isn't invited to express an opinion on the complaint. It's purely about the facts of the matter. So this is the first sort of key stage. So once I've got details of the complaint and the response from the subject member, I will write up a short initial assessment which sets out the evidence that has been provided to me, and I will then consult with one of our 3 independent persons to seek their views in terms of the next steps to take with the complaint. When I'm doing that initial consideration, and also when the independent persons are thinking about this as well, we'll think about those bullet points there in terms of how much evidence has been provided, how serious is the complaint, is it trivial, it actually says in the Code of Conduct, is it political tit for tat, is it duplication? What that means is, has it been considered through another complaints process? It might be a political party's complaints process that has already dealt with the complaint. Length of time is important. The sort of yardstick is that a complaint over 6 months old is unlikely, not always, but unlikely to be taken forward further, given the length of time that's elapsed. People's memories are not as good as if it's within the last period. So that's part of the consideration. The public interest, is it in the public interest to pursue or to investigate this complaint further? And finally, has the subject member offered an apology or any other remedial action? Sometimes, I think it's that simple apology, not necessarily because the subject member believes that they've breached a code of conduct, but in a human sense, to respond to the complainant with a simple apology. So that's the sort of thinking that takes place at that stage. So we have that consultation meeting with the independent person, and there's basically 4 actions that can be taken at that stage. So the first one is to take no action at all, because there's clear evidence that there's been no breach of the Code of Conduct, and that means that that's the end of the matter. The complaint is concluded, and a significant number of complaints that come in that initial assessment stage end at that stage because there's insufficient evidence or it doesn't meet the threshold of a Code of Conduct complaint. B there, we might seek to resolve the matter informally. So in other words, it might be very clear perhaps that there has been a breach. A detailed investigation won't take us any further in terms of understanding the complaint itself. So again, at that stage, we'd look to resolve the matter, although in that instance, the councillor concerned would be officially subject to a decision notice, which would go to the council that they've been found to be in breach. Item C there, sometimes when we get to that initial stage, it's not entirely clear. We don't feel we've got enough evidence to make any sort of value judgment either way. So we would commission a formal investigation to take place, an investigating officer, whether that's an officer in the council, whether it's somebody from outside of the council, would be commissioned to look at the detail of the case, to interview the subject member and indeed the complainant as well, to get a deeper dive into understanding the evidence that's available. And then D I've never actually used, I must admit, but there is that provision to refer the complaint to the Standards Committee. I guess, to be frank, and I'm happy to take sort of questions on this, but D sounds sort of slightly counterintuitive in the sense of, I can't imagine if it came to the Standards Committee, you wouldn't decide A, B or C anyway, but if that makes any sort of sense. But I'm happy to take questions on that. So in terms of timescales, that initial assessment decision, we measure that against doing that within 20 working days of the receipt of the complaint. So you see this is sort of quite tight, particularly given that the subject member can have 15 days to respond. And we've done, certainly recently, we've done much better than we've been doing historically in terms of turning those complaints round. Once we've reached a decision, obviously the subject member, the town and parish clerk, if relevant, and the complainant themselves will be informed sort of same day as that decision has taken place. So that's the sort of process up to my involvement, or direct involvement, if you like. Just to say a little bit, just to sort of finish the story off of that journey of a complaint. So anonymous complaints, we do occasionally get anonymous ones, as it says in the Code of Conduct. We wouldn't usually consider them, but there are exceptions to that, and it really does depend on the circumstances. The complainant might feel unable to reveal their identity for various reasons, so we'll take every case on its own merit there, but typically a complaint from an anonymous person is going to have less weight than a complainant who puts their name to it. So a finding on investigation. So go back a couple of slides. This is point C, where we've commissioned a formal investigation. We've got a written investigation report. That investigator may conclude, having considered all the evidence, that there is no breach of the Code of Conduct, and that just describes what happens in those circumstances. I've highlighted a couple of parts in bold there. So a summary of all complaints, investigations will be provided to the Standards Committee. That's what you get at every meeting, that update on complaints. But for any councillors who aren't found to be in breach, clearly we don't disclose the name of those councillors who've been subject to a complaint. If there is a breach of the Code of Conduct, then these are the options available to both myself, but also at the request of the subject member in terms of what happens next. So I've got delegated authority to seek to resolve the matter. It says informally, which is perhaps slightly misleading because it still requires a decision notice. There may be some sanctions. Training is a typical sort of sanction, but that's within my gift to resolve those matters informally. Perhaps the word informally just indicates that it's sort of the officer is able to conclude on those matters where there's been a breach. But sometimes the subject member won't agree with the investigating officer's findings, and the subject member's got the right to ask that the report is referred to basically a subcommittee of this committee. We've had one hearings panel this year. We are looking to organise another hearings panel in the next few weeks. But I would say it is quite exceptional to have a hearings panel. I think the one that we had in January was the first that we'd had in sort of two to 3 years. So it's not something that happens every week, but obviously it's for the subject member to decide themselves where they agree and they think they've got good mitigations and a defence to put their case in front of a panel of their peers. So this just sets out pretty much what I've already said about the decision notice. It gets published on the council website and it would go to the next appropriate meeting of the Borough Council. There is no discussion of that item. It's purely for the council to note. And the same process happens should it be a parish or town council, that the complaint and the decision notice would go to their council. As it says in that final sentence there is no right of appeal against the decision. This is something that the government is or has been consulting on in terms of whether or not there should be some sort of appeal process for councillors, and we wait to hear the outcome of that consultation from the government. Just to sort of pretty much sort of wrap up, so should we need to have a local hearing? It's all set out in the Constitution in terms of how that happens. It's a politically balanced hearings panel. It'll comprise between 3 and 5 voting members of the Standards Committee. And if it's relating to a town or parish, then one of our co-opted town or parish councillors would also be part of the panel but not have voting rights. It's also important to stress, I've already mentioned the role of the independent person at that initial consultation stage, but should a complaint go to a hearings panel, the independent person as well would be asked to attend and would be invited to give advice to the panel in terms of the evidence that they hear during that panel meeting. So that was it in a sort of, hopefully a relatively sort of quick canter through, and hopefully there's nothing particularly new there, because you've seen that before and you've experienced a hearings panel, some of you. Hopefully it's pretty clear, but very happy, Chair, to take any questions any members have got.
Thank you, Andrew. Caroline and then Sam.
Oh no, it's Andrew.
Oh, yeah, Sam.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. My question was more around maybe another presentation. It might be good to have some sort of slides on, you know, the codes, the complaints that maybe don't make that initial threshold, like to understand almost like top of the funnel, like what comes in, how many come in, what then makes it to them, and what does that look like maybe over the last few years?
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of bring some more information back on that.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. You were talking about town and parishes and having a witness. If the complaint happened during a meeting, would the witness who'd seen it, I mean, one of the parish councillors or the town parish councillors seen and witnessed the incident, are they still able to be in a panel? Because I would have thought they'd conflict of interest on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously we'd have to look at the particular circumstances, but I would probably suggest that there sounds like there would be a conflict of interest there. And again, it's really important, isn't it, that the whole processes seem to be fair and transparent. So if there is sort of doubt that somebody might be conflicted, then we'd look to find an alternative panel member.
Just relating to that, obviously I was nominated to be a co-optee for Wokingham Town Parish, and we have one other town parish representative and a parish council representative. I am actually also a member of a parish council, should that be needed. Is there anything that you would need me to do so that Finchampstead Parish can confirm, or not confirm if they so choose, to have me as representing them, so that I could fill either role should you find yourselves in such a situation?
So I think if I understand the question correctly, are you saying, Sally, that this is about if you sit on a hearings panel, you attend a hearings panel as the parish representative, would you have a conflict?
If it was a parish councillor and it was from, how is it? If, say, you had a complaint about somebody from Twyford Parish, then obviously the parish council representative is also from Twyford Parish. If you needed another parish council representative, although I'm officially here from a town council, I could do both hats if you needed it. But in order for that to be possible, would you need something from Finchampstead Parish?
Again, it's perhaps a slightly weak answer this, but we'd have to look at the particular circumstances of the case in terms of whether somebody might have a conflict and how we'd manage that.
Thank you, Chair. Where you recommend, whether it's informally or formally, that somebody takes particular action, be it training or writing an apology, is there a follow-through to make sure that that happens?
Yes, I would follow that through personally, and if I had any concerns that it wasn't happening, I would escalate it through the chair and on to the Standards Committee, and that would be part of my report to you at every meeting in terms of the complaints process.
Any further questions? Can I ask our new members at the back, who are not officially part of the committee, but part of the team now, if you have any questions from what Andrew said? Not for me. We've gone through and understand what our roles are. Okay, thank you. Andrew, an update on the Code of Conduct complaints.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is your usual report. So hopefully you're sort of used to the format by now, but again, happy to take any suggestions in terms of how it could be improved. And I'll take Sam's point earlier about maybe we can bring some of that information that you asked for into these reports in the future. But just in terms of headlines, if I start off with this current year, 2025-26, you'll see on Appendix A, which is on page 10, that sets out there the details of 3 complaints that we'd had at the time this paper went to press. In terms of updates since last week, WBC 3 on page 10, that has now been concluded. I had the consultation meeting last Friday with the independent person, and we concluded that there was no breach on that particular complaint, so both the complainant and the subject member have been informed about that outcome. A second update, though, is that since publication I've received a new complaint, which was received last week, that is progressing well in terms of the process. I've had the subject member's response to that, and I have a meeting on Friday with one of our independent persons to consider the next steps with regard to that particular complaint. So that is the position with the 25-26 complaints. And then just if I take you to page 11, which is Appendix B, you'll see we've got quite an historic complaint there that has been to investigation, and it is en route now to a hearings panel because the subject member disagrees with the findings of the investigator. So again, as I described in the last item, that's the opportunity for the members' peers to consider the complaint, to listen to the investigator's reports and hear from the investigator, and to come to a decision as to whether or not they accept the investigator's conclusions or something else. So that one is in the process of being arranged, and I hope that will be sorted out within the next few weeks. That was it, Chair, in terms of the update.
It's quite a long timeline there, isn't there, between that one? Is it obviously been challenging to try and resolve without getting to a hearing, which is ideally what you want to do. You want to resolve it, but you know, obviously it's without outside of our performance timescales. So we're looking nearly 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate. There's various reasons why that happened. I'll give you some of the sort of headlines from that. One was that the investigation itself, it was relatively difficult to engage with the member concerned and get responses. So the investigation took longer than I would have hoped for. And since the investigator concluded the report, there's been a number of discussions in terms of the next steps and the subject member not accepting the findings, but not necessarily wanting to take it to a hearings panel. So no excuses there. I totally agree, Rebecca, that this one really does stand out. But I guess the positive is that at least within the next few weeks now, there will be a resolution to it.
Do we have a date for that now, Neil? Is it being confirmed?
No, but I will contact the members shortly. I'm just waiting for some confirmations.
Sally?
I noticed that the 3 this year are all Facebook related. What is the new one related to, please?
The new one is relating to, it's not social media for a change, so that's a positive. It's relating to alleged comments that were made to a member of the public. So it's not following that pattern that the committee has seen quite regularly over the last 2 or 3 years in particular.
I mean, it's quite related, just verbal rather than digital from the sounds of it. Is it worth doing some kind of communications training for councillors? Like how to not be an awful person by accident? How to be diplomatic? I don't know. Is that something that is worth helping with?
I think a lot of that's down to parents. And by the time we become councillors, it's getting a bit late. But it's sad to hear that something like that comes from a councillor.
Yeah, but 4 out of 4 are relating to people talking inappropriately to members of the public. That's not great. That's definitely a pattern.
Can I just say at the moment, they're just, that these are not formalised, you know, so these are complaints that have been made by the general public, but they haven't been fully investigated. So I think before we cast aspersions about saying people have done things, they've got to be investigated. Yeah.
While we accept that, I think we also accept that as public servants, as councillors, it doesn't matter what we think, it's what we say that makes a difference. I don't think in these committees we're ever in bad humour with ourselves, and so we ought to treat our residents like that. After all, if they don't vote for us, we don't get elected.
Could I perhaps clarify what I mean by that? Perhaps something like de-escalation techniques or something. And when I say talking awfully, enough that somebody has taken umbrage at what was said, whether or not it is deemed to be in breach of code of conduct, somebody has taken umbrage. Now, that could just be they didn't like the content, but de-escalation techniques can help with that sort of thing. And I know that's something that a number of people would probably benefit from, myself included, because it's not training I've ever had.
We can look at that. I think the reason I hesitate a little bit, I guess, is pitching that training correctly and not making it sort of, we need to take that away. I'm sure there's something that we can do, but it just needs to be pitched at the right level where it's helpful.
If I remember rightly, last year's consultation, one of the ones that the national consultations recommended that for councillors in general anyway as a means of councillor protection and safety. So maybe that's the route we take, particularly in light of the next agenda item.
Can I just say, at the end of the day, there is a clear code of conduct which all councillors are given when they become a councillor. And if there is a complaint against them, it is investigated by Andrews. I think, you know, there is basic training as there is, but we all have our own individual responsibilities. Regarding these current complaints, they are in investigation at the moment, so I don't really want to comment on them because they're not. There's nothing verified as yet. I'm not saying there is or there isn't. But we do have a clear code of conduct. We all know what we shouldn't be doing. And if it gets to the point of a complaint, well, we have the right to speak with the monitoring officer, represent ourselves and whatever it comes to. But we all do get training right in the beginning when you arrive and you're elected, and you kind of, you know what your expectations are. So, and I think if you actually look at this is such a small minority. If you think of the amount of commenting councillors are doing on social media all the time, this is just a tiny minority, and unfortunately, you know, obviously some things do happen at times, we know they do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying as a proportion of, from, you know, if you think that most of us are commenting daily, responding to residents and making various things, and this is such a small, I'm sure Andrew will probably agree with that, this is a very small minority of incidents that actually happen.
I think between them, Andrew, Neil and Neil keep their eye on training and what members are doing, and would be very quick to bring things forward if they thought they were an advantage to us.
Yeah, well, just very briefly, Chair. So this, you've got the detailed survey results from the LGA's annual survey around debate not hate. As a committee, you previously considered the subject of debate not hate. I guess from an officer perspective, it's really whether or not there are any specific actions that you'd ask officers to take in terms of things that would help, as we talked about in terms of your previous meeting. The police have put on those sessions for councillors, but there may be more of those that you'd like, or some other intervention that would help. So really just keen to hear from members if there's anything that you think would be appropriate and commensurate with what the survey results are showing.
Any questions from anyone? Any comments? Rebecca?
Sorry to butt in again. It's interesting reading it, and it's a bit sad reading it in some respects that it's groups of people that seem to be more represented in this, as in ethnic minorities and women and disabled councillors. And I'm sure we've all had experiences of it, and the last election was pretty bad. I had some bad experiences, and I know personally I've been targeted, and having a husband that's also a councillor, that he hasn't had that response yet. I have. And I think sometimes it's having an awareness of what I think we put up with a lot sometimes, and we don't. I know I haven't said things in the past. I've talked about it before openly with people here, haven't said things. So I think any kind of updates, anything going forward is useful, just reminding us that it is important that we say these things and share our experiences, and don't just say it is okay for people to be abusive towards you. And make personal comments, because I had something personal to do with, I was a governor, I'm also a governor at a local school, and they were horrified when I told them the other day what somebody had said about me on Facebook, which is complete rubbish. But, you know, it's just a personal experience when you look at it, and you do see that women and ethnic minorities are kind of disproportionately represented. But I think we need to just keep going as we can. And I think you do a great job. So it's no way criticism to the council. I think sometimes we just put up with it.
Caroline?
All I was going to add to that, because I've had experiences too, is my one regret was just not walking away from it. And I think that's what we're not very good at. Conflict resolution, which I was taught in retail, but when to walk away, because we still want to make our point. So maybe some sort of training on that, to suddenly recognise the signs that this isn't, you're not going to get anywhere, and just say I'm very sorry and walk away. And I wish I'd done that a few more times. But thank you. It's carrying on from what you're saying.
I think what you've said is absolutely right, both of you, but I think we're fairly lucky here as elected members in that we normally get on. We work well together. We battle in public, obviously, because that's part of the role. But as members working on committees, I mean, we know that we work together well. we've done so many committees, Rebecca and I are almost joined at the hip. And I'm very thankful for that, because it means we can share with each other if that bit hurt or we didn't understand that bit. So, anything else? Right, I haven't decided that anything else is urgent, except to go home and water the garden.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply to me. I've got a blue badge, so everybody needs to invite me around. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.